Hello everyone, I am Bradley Swart, Associate Professor of Computer and Information Science at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And in this video today we're going to take a look at a very important topic, one of code refactoring. And it's something that we generally can't really teach too much at the first and second year level here at the college. It's something that you get where, when you're completing or working toward completing your bachelor's degree, or you're out in the field and you're working on, projects of substantial scope. We're going to show an example here. This thing works. Everything's going to work just fine whether I do code refactoring or not. But it's a matter of I have a game project that I'm working on, and everything I have works great for 3 or 4 or 5 objects. But as I know that this game is going to get much more complicated than the first menu system that I have, how can I simplify this? And it's one of those, you make the code a little more complex, but then you simplify your work on the back end. There's always a trade-off one way or another. And so we're going to be simplifying the amount of code that we write such that as I scale up and as we scale up this project, it's going to work and it's going to reduce my workload overall. So I do implore you, those of you who are itching to just hit the stop button on this, that even though this is a gaming related example, that everything we're learning here applies across the board to everything you would ever do in software development. So let's jump right in and take a look at the problem, and let's start working toward simplifying and refactoring the code. So the example I'm going to give here is the fade in and fade out effects that I've put on top of the game. The game could very well run without any screen transitions like you just saw, and this is a very basic menu system. But if I want to go back to the credits, you can see the fade out and you can see the fade in, and there's delays and all sorts of other things. But I just wanted to show you that we're going to be working on the fade objects because it's a simple example. It's just something that's working on, and the code is kind of not important. I do cover that in previous videos, so if you're interested, you can kind of fall back on that too. But that's not the main topic today. So even this falls back. But what happened was here, and let me bring this up here, is I have this base class. And again, this is a little more advanced topic for those of you, this is inheritance and polymorphism and all sorts of stuff on top of the refactoring topic, which is okay. But I have this, this class that's like a base class for the, a default behavior for how a fade out effect is supposed to work. And so just to say, again, like how fast should it fade out? What color should the fade out go to? And I like to put it in my code when I do this, like you can touch this, don't touch that. Especially, the rules aren't for me. The rules are for this fictitious second person who would ever be part of this project. So like as the developer, I go, yeah, you can modify this, but if you touch this and you do something bad with it, I'm going to get very, very mad at you because I set up these things for the developer or for the designers and the artists to tinker with, but the stuff that I need to get the job done is done under the hood that you shouldn't modify this. So it's kind of like a public versus a private variable, if you want to think of it that way. So those are the setups, and then I just basically reduce down the image alpha because all you're doing is just taking a black image or a white image and just kind of putting it on top of the game, frame by frame, and basically just at the end of the day shooting that thing out to the screen. So that is my base class. But what came up as I was thinking through this, and say you can see here that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, at least right in the moment, there's 6 objects that fade in and fade out, and I just have a basic menu system that does very little. And so when I went to look at this, I go, oh, here's my fade out to main menu object, and then here is my fade out splash screen object. And let me zoom this out just a little bit. Let me get this. I don't know why it's not. I had it all perfect a minute ago. Okay, so this isn't ideal, but it will get the point across. So I have my fade out to main menu fade, and I have my fade out from the splash screen fade. And there's a problem already that I don't have consistency in my naming, and that's part of the problem here. If both of these parent to that base class we were just talking about. And when I see this, I go, oh, cool, look at the code. It's identical. There's no difference between this code and that code because the goal of both of these objects is to fade, and when the fade ends, to kind of trigger the room to go to the next room, to a room transition. And so that is the same. And in the create event, there's one line of code difference here. The countdown is the same, the event inherited is the same. It's this, how much time should I wait before I start the fade, because sometimes maybe you want to delay 5 or 6 seconds like this. You want to delay a little bit, maybe a second or two or something like that. Like in the case of the splash screen, I wanted to wait 8 seconds, or maybe that's even too much, and then it would trigger the transition to begin. And in this case, I want to trigger it immediately, like if I want to quit the game or something like that. And so that's the only true difference in all of this code. And if I do this over and over and over again with all these different objects, then you can see that like I'm creating all this extra code, all this extra trouble, when all I want to do is modify one slight thing under the hood. And so for these two objects, the room go-tos are the main menus, but pretty much if you compare this to other objects, you will see that the only true difference between like the fade out to main menu versus the fade out to controls, you can see that the fade is 0 just like before and everything is the same. The only difference in this case is which room do I want to go to. And so I see this potential to reduce down 6 and now 9 or 10 or hundreds of different fade objects between different menus or just things that are going to occur in my game. And I see a way I can refactor this, as that's the key for today, is to make this so I reduce this down to just a couple objects that I can use over and over and over again. One thing I wanted to note is that you'll see here there's a ton of fade out objects. There's 6 of them here at least. I think that's all of them here. But you notice that nowhere in here is there more than just one fade in. And the reason for that is pretty simple, because when I fade out, I'm inside of a room, and when I hit the end of the room, when I trigger this and I want to go to the next room, that's where the differences are going to be applied. But when I do a fade in essence, we might want to modify this. We're going to modify this as well. But at the tail end of this, when I start up a new room, like there's no worries about what's happening. I just can start this thing as a black screen or a white screen or whatever I need to do. And then once that begins, then I can trigger the thing to kind of do its job. There's nothing, when the thing, just to go in here real fast, I think it destroys itself. Nope, I guess it doesn't. But one of those things it should do when it hits this 0 point, when it's fully transparent, is to say, oh, okay, cool. I don't need to exist anymore because I've done my job. And you can kind of just kind of kill yourself off and move on with your life there. Okay, so there are a few ways to go about doing this. One way I'm going to show you here is I'm going to take this fade out splash screen of all things. I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to drag it down, because eventually this is going to be like a base class in itself. Even though it is like a derived class, it's going to be basically the class that we don't modify, base of a base. And so this is going to be fade out to another room is what I'm going to name it as. And I'm going to go in here, and so now is say like you get all the code for free, and here in the step event, this main menu room, I'm going to steal that, and I'm just going to say, oh, I'm going to make this very generic now and say, oh, it's called next room now, and I'm going to move that over to here. And so there's no difference in, at least with this, it's refactoring. The end goal is to have exactly the same behavior at the end of the day, but then to make this a lot nicer on our end. So I've got this going for us. And so the next room is going to be the main menu room. This time before fading is just set to something. And these are just, as we get to show you other things, these are just defaults. And this is basically, you'll know if you messed up because it won't do what you're expecting it to do. And so on this end, we've pretty much maxed out what we need to accomplish here. And so now it's a matter of using this object in different places, and we can kind of get rid of all this stuff that we had prior. But before we get to any of that, the question becomes like, well, how would we set this up? How would we create this and set up all these and make it easy on ourselves? Because yeah, we very well could just say instance create and then set these variables. And you go, well, now you have to remember all these variables. And again, this is only like 7 or 10 objects. What if you have thousands upon thousands of objects? You're going to have to remember, double or triple or quadruple the number of variables for each object, and it just becomes unmanageable. So what I can do is set up a script here, create a new script, and I'll use it in GML code and here. So let me just talk about it here. Let me get rid of this nonsense. We get it. And so this function that the script function that I'm going to be calling is going to be basically the fade out to another room. It's a function that knows all the behavior. We only have to think about this right now and once, or anytime we want to go back and modify this. But I say, okay, for right now, the next room is the next room, whatever parameter is passed in. And let me go back into that object here just to have that. The next room is the next room. And then how much time do I want before the fading? Because these are the two variables that people are allowed to touch. So I should be able to give them access to that through parameters to this function, and it'll do all the work for me. And so I'm going to do this two ways here. I'm going to show you the way I used to do it, and then I'm going to learn myself here because I know this is a newer thing. It might be, depending on how it's new. It's newer to me because I don't get to use GameMaker day to day like I used to want to. But I'm going to do this instance create, and I'm going to use the layering structure here. And so I'm going to set up, and I'm going to go, okay, it doesn't matter where I put this object in the room, in this case anyway. I'm going to be creating this fade out to another room object type. And then it says, okay, oh wait, hold on. Oh, the layer, I'm sorry, I got the order of things mixed up here. I'm gonna put this in the instances layer. The object type is gonna be this, and what's cool here is this new part, the structure part, which in what I used to do here was something like this, and I would do inst dot next room equals next room. And I even kidded around. I would there was a name I called for conscriptor because it's part constructor, part script. And so it was something I used for a long time, and I never, and now I don't need to worry about it anymore. I should have templated or should have trademarked that thing while the time was right, and made my 3 cents on it. But you can see this is how I would do things, and then I would, in case you want to use this thing after you're done working with it, I would return it back to whoever called the function. You don't have to take the return and do anything with it, but it would be there for you if you wanted it. So I create the object, I set up the two variables, and then I return the darn thing. And so let me look up. This is the cool part about this. I don't want to download the new stuff right now. But now what's here is this example down here of how will this is how things used to be. And I guess I do things slightly different than even they do it. But then now this is the cool way to do this. I can add this inside of my code to simplify my workflow. So let's take a look at how you would do this. And again, it's brand new to me, so it's a little tricky, but you put stuff between here, bring this up, we'll steal this stuff, we'll put it in here. I do need to change this, so I'll just call it next room, and I'll say time before fading, just to have something slightly different than what we're about to be doing here. So I'm going to say, okay, the next room in the object is going to be named next room without all the spacing, the parameter that's coming in, and the time before fading is going to be called time before fading on the other end here, whatever I passed in as the parameter to this thing. And since this is all in one object or one function now, this whole thing can be returned. And this is just a syntactic thing, but it's just a different way to go about doing things. And I need a comma instead of a semicolon there, and hopefully that fixes everything up. And now the only warning is that I created this thing and I'm not using it anywhere, so we'll have to figure out how to do that. So hopefully I did this right. But now this function will create this object with these parameters. And so my only question is, does it blow out does it create the object and then override, or like the order of operations for this is something that I don't know anything about here in the moment. So now with this in place, it should be pretty easy. I'm inside the buttons. The easiest way to kind of test this out is to test with the buttons here. And I'm saying, okay, I'm in the credits button class, and what happens now when I click in the button, it creates that fade out to credits object that we were talking about up here. And just so we can kind of tinker and just like play with it, I'm gonna get rid of it. And so it doesn't exist anymore. So even if I tried to, if I run my game, and I'm not going to, if I try to run the game now, it'll crash because there's no object of this type that exists. So like I'm very confident in what I'm about to do here. And I want to I'm going to rename this. I don't know if I have to, but I guess I'll call it fade scripts. And inside of there is the actual script that we want. And so here, I'm going to borrow this so that I don't have to worry about spelling anything out incorrectly. And then go back into my credits button here and say, okay, cool. What I want to do here is I want to fade out to another room. That room, like we've discussed before, is the main menu room. And the time before fading, no, 0. I want it to be instantaneous. And so right now, so we got that, and now I can do this a few times over. I've got my credits button, I got my play game button. You can say this is going to be fade out to hub world. So I have my rooms down here. I want to go to the hub room. I know it's not the best naming, but it's the hub world room. And if it works for one, it works for all, right? It's just a matter, did I type the name in right? And then the same with the controls. I have this controls room. So those are the 3 big ones for the, and then we really can't do anything with the, unless we fix up a new room, and I think I can do that, and maybe not this video, is what do I want to do for the fade out to quit? Because that is a different behavior. Everything else was go to a different game room, but this one is go to do a game, like, do a game. And we could actually fix this all up so that instead of going out to a room, it calls a different, like you tell it what script function you want it to call. That would be pretty cool too, but that's a little more advanced than just this. It's already advanced enough right now. I don't want to add that extra layer to this. So if I did everything right here, those 3 objects, fade out to credits, fade out to hub world, have all been reduced. Even, let's see, this fade out to splash screen, that's from the main menu, right? So I guess we can get rid of that. And so what is this? From the control screen, the fade out to main menu. So this, maybe we can fix this button too, because right now, this thing did exactly everything else. Fade out to main menu room, and so we can fade back, so I can get rid of that. So everything but the fade out to quit. And so now, the only thing left here would be, well, if I'm inside the, let's see, where am I here? If I'm inside the splash screen, oh, there's no splash screen objects, because we've eliminated all the things. But we can go inside here to the splash screen room, and there is an object here of that type. And this is where video games get tricky, of like, where do these objects, where do they live, and what do I do with them? And you're not expected to always know everything. That's why there's thousands and thousands of bugs in well, every Bethesda game. But you get the point. But let's say fade in base class. Well, I wanted to fade out base class here. So let's just see. Hold on. Let's see what this code. For the fade in base class, I'm trying to figure out where the code is that will actually change the room, because I deleted that object type, and so I'm kind of a little scared of this right now. Well, let's just try running it. Let's see what happens. I don't exactly know. It probably might just sit here forever. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Give it a couple more seconds. Again, it should be about 8 seconds before it does anything, and it's not doing anything. Fair enough, right? Because we eliminated that. But now we do need to create an object, and this is the tricky part. Like this is again, this isn't meant to be an easy thing, and there's no pill for this. There's no simple way to do all of this. So I need to figure out a way to have that fade out object sit around and wait that amount of time and then go back and start the new room. So the way I can think of doing this, and again, this is where things get tricky, is to say, okay, cool, I'm in this room, and over here in the room settings, let's see if I can find this. There's this thing, and this is where, like, if you forget that you have code in here, it can get very tricky very quickly. Like, there's this thing called creation code, and it literally is, well, what happens in this room when this room gets created? And in this case, like, I already have the fade in object working for us, but now I can say, I can call the script, I just don't remember exactly what I called it here, fade out to another room. Oops, fade out, I don't know why I didn't go there, fade out to another room, and I can go, well, I want to go to the main menu room. Okay, I don't know, it's 11 o'clock. And so, main menu room, and how much time do I want to wait? This time I'll wait around 300 game frames. So, or room speed, which is basically how fast should the room theoretically run, 60 frames per second, and I'll do times 5. I could put, like, and again, if I change the room speed, then that kind of changes things up, but I know that this is going to run for basically 5 seconds, because room speed variable is defined as the speed of all rooms in game frames per second. This is not how fast it's actually running, but it's theoretically how fast it should run. And so in this case, and I'm putting this code inside of here, and it's weird because where are you going to find this code? It's only through here. I don't think anything pops up unless, like in this case, you can have it kind of above. But maybe, I don't know. But I think now everything's refactored, at least on the fade out side. And so it did, there's my fade in. And so now it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or whatever, 5 seconds or whatever it was. Oh, so wait, maybe it does do the. So that was my question of, like, what is the order of operations? Because in this object, these two things get set. This was 8 seconds, right? And so, and then when I actually tried to set up the object in the room, and I have my script to do that, I'm trying to set up these variables, which are the same variables, with the whatever numbers were passed in. But let me try this. Let's go into that room real quick. This is an easy way to test which order of operations is here. Let me find that creation code. Oh, I want the creation code for the room, not the object. And let's just say 3 seconds instead of 5. So it'll be very obvious which one of the two is being called first. So here's my room, and I go, okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it's very obvious here that in the order of operations, and this is freaking me out here, is that this gets called before the actual create event of the room or of the object. My apologies for that. So what I need to do here is now, and this is where things get tricky another time, because things might crash on us now later on down the road, so I'm kind of disappointed. I wish it would run the create event and then run this on top of it afterwards, but whatever. I'm sure people have a very good reason for why they do things the way they do. But now what I need to do over here is basically just comment this out and just say, okay, next room, or I guess I can leave a comment here, script handles creation of these variables. Member variables, if you want to call it, do it right. And so next room and time before fading. And if you want to add a detail, I'm not going to, this video is already long enough, but now I don't have to worry about that. Next, well, I guess I'll just do it anyway. What room to transition to, and then how long before we start fading. And so there you go. So now I'm not defining these variables in here, and they will be okay because they're being defined in the script. So now it should be a little more obvious. When I run this, there's 0, 1, 2, 3, and there's stuff. I'm not just timing it right, and now everything else is going. I go to my controls room, I come back, controls room, I click on main menu, I come back, and I go to the, so there's my controls room, here's my credits, which takes me right back to here. Oops, nope. My credits, okay, so my credits button, what did I do wrong here? My credits button takes me, oops, I just put in the wrong room a couple minutes ago, so this should take me to the controls room. So it's just a matter of, as I was talking and doing and thinking, I just put up the wrong places. 0, 1, 2, 3, and again, the timing is right, I'm just not timing it right. I'm not a metronome. And so the controls takes me to the control screen. This brings me back. Credits takes me to the credits screen. This brings me back, return to main. And then this start game will take me to the other room, that's that. And again, the only thing that's really different is the only behavior that's different here is this fade out to quit, because it's not fading out to a room, it's fading out to some code. And we could refactor that another time if we saw the need for that, but we're not really going to worry about that so much. Okay, so that kind of covers everything. And so this gives me a base behavior. This gives me a custom behavior that I can use over and over and over again in code, because now I don't have to write objects. Now it's just a one-liner. And for right now, and then of course, if I wanted to come back in here and go, well, what color? I could just modify it by adding the parameters and then setting everything up. I'm not going to. This is good enough for today's video. And eventually I was going to do the fade in, but you get the gist of what we're trying to accomplish here. And so I'm trying to reduce it down. So now I've reduced down the number of objects I have in my scene, in my whole, in my whole project, and I'm never going to have to add another object for fading out from somewhere into another transition to another room. I just write the one line of code, and that's all there is to it. And if I want to advance this, as I said, we can just go ahead and do that. So refactoring. Work up front to save you work on the back end. So it's one of those things that it's really, at the end of a project is not the time to be working on this per se, but the time to be working on this is when you're, like at the beginning here, or kind of in the midway point of you're setting up a feature like this, and you can kind of think ahead and go, oh goodness, I'm duplicating code. How can I find a way to reduce the number of duplications so that I can, save time on the, a couple months or a couple weeks or a couple days from now. I don't have to, every time I want to set up a fade out object, I don't have to spend minutes or days or hours or God knows what trying to do that, when all I have to do is write one line of code. And then if there's a mistake in any one of those objects, I just have to come back here, or I just have to come back into this one object to fix up that code. I don't have to fix it in 315 different places. And oopsie, I only fixed up 292 of them, so there's 30 subtle bugs somewhere in my program. You kind of get the point of what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so this is refactoring in a nutshell. Thanks for sticking it out with me as always. It's a 25-minute video, so I'm sure I made a mistake somewhere. So please comment below if you have any ways to do things better, especially with the new Game Maker features, or anything you want to comment about. You guys are pretty good at commenting when you find something you want to talk about. So thanks for sticking it out with me as always. I'm going to be moving on to animating characters next. So I hope to see you in that video or any other video that I have, all the 300-something videos that I have up to this point of various topics I enjoy making for you guys, all 20 or 30 of the people who view these things. But that's great. Great to have these videos so you guys can learn from it. So thanks. Take care, everybody. See you next time.